The house costs $500,000. The real question is whether you can afford the payment. In 2026, this is the quiet line dividing two different Americas, those who can still buy and those who will rent indefinitely. Because the price of the house is not the problem anymore. The price of money is. 10 years ago, a $500,000 home sounded expensive. Today, it sounds normal, common, almost modest in some cities. And yet, fewer people than ever can actually qualify for it. Not because they're reckless, not because they didn't work hard enough, because the math has turned against them. Let's start with a simple picture. A young couple, both working, combined income $150,000 a year. By most standards, they're doing well. Top income bracket in many countries, stable jobs, no luxury lifestyle. They find a $500,000 house. Nothing fancy, 3 bedrooms, far from the city center. They put down 20%. That's $100,000 in cash. Already, most people fail here. But let's say they somehow saved it, so they borrow $400,000. Now the real test begins. In 2026, mortgage rates are not low. They're not historically extreme either. They're simply normal again. 7%, maybe 6.5% if they're lucky. At 7%, a $400,000 loan means a monthly payment of about $2,660. That's just principal and interest. Now add property taxes, insurance, maintenance, repairs. In many areas, that pushes the monthly cost above $3,200. $3,200 every month for 30 years. Now compare that to their income. After tax, that $150,000 salary becomes roughly $9,000 per month. So the house alone consumes more than a third of everything they take home, before food, before transport, before childcare, before health care, before saving. This is still considered affordable by the system. And this is where the first illusion appears. Banks don't ask if the payment feels safe. They ask if it fits a ratio, usually around 30 to 35% of your gross income. If the ratio works, the loan is approved. Not because the life is sustainable, because the spreadsheet allows it. This is how affordability is defined now. Not by comfort, by tolerance. But here is the part almost no one says out loud. The payment is not the hardest part. The down payment is. To buy this house, you needed $100,000 in cash, after tax, after rent, after inflation. If you save $20,000 a year, which is already difficult, that's 5 years of perfect discipline, assuming prices don't rise faster than your savings. In reality, they usually do. So the down payment keeps moving away from you. This creates a silent filter, not based on intelligence, not based on effort, based on starting position. People whose parents owned property, people who inherited, people who had help. They enter the market early. Their equity grows with prices. They use that equity for the next house. Everyone else tries to save while the target runs away. This is not a market. It is a conveyor belt. Now let's zoom out. Why is this happening now? 3 forces collided. First, cheap money ended. For more than a decade, interest rates were near zero. This inflated house prices everywhere. People didn't buy houses. They bought monthly payments. Low rates made expensive assets look affordable. When rates rose, prices did not fall enough to compensate. So now we have the worst combination. High prices, high rates. Second, housing supply never caught up. Cities restricted building. Zoning throws density. Construction lagged population. So demand kept rising. Supply stayed tight. Prices became structural. Third, wages did not keep pace. House prices in many regions doubled in 10 years. Incomes did not. This created a new class divide, not between rich and poor, but between owners and non-owners. Because once you own, the system works for you. Your mortgage is fixed. Your rent stops rising. Your asset inflates with policy. If you don't own, every year becomes harder than the last. Now let's return to our couple. They qualify on paper, barely. But something else happens in 2026. Stress testing. Banks don't just test you at today's rate. They test you at higher rates, 8%, 9%. Suddenly, the same couple fails, not because the house changed, because the future became riskier. So even high earners are blocked. This is why in many cities today, the median household cannot buy the median home. This is not a temporary mismatch. It is a structural break. And here comes the quiet irony. Governments keep saying they want affordable housing. Central banks keep saying they want stable prices. But the entire financial system is built on rising asset values. Pensions depend on it. Banks depend on it. Households depend on it. If prices fall sharply, balance sheets collapse. So the system protects prices, not buyers. This is why policies rarely target prices directly. They target credit, subsidies, guarantees, which often push prices higher. So who can actually afford a $500,000 house in 2026? Not the median worker, not even the median professional. It's households with three things: high income, large existing assets, and family support, or investors. Because for investors, the math is different. They don't need the house to be affordable. They need it to be rentable. And when enough investors enter the market, prices decouple from local incomes entirely. This is how cities become unlivable, not because people are poor, because capital is mobile. And one final layer matters more than all the rest: time. If you bought 10 years ago, your payment is low, your equity is huge, your risk is small. If you buy now, your payment is high, your equity is zero, your risk is maximum. So the same house creates two completely different lives. This is not a housing story. It is a timing story. In 2026, a $500,000 house is not expensive. It is selective. It selects for people who arrived earlier, people who had help, people who already own. Everyone else is told to wait. But here is the unresolved question. If home ownership is now permanently delayed for a generation, what happens to wealth formation? What happens to retirement, to family stability, to social mobility? And if prices cannot fall, and wages cannot rise fast enough, and credit cannot expand safely, then who exactly is the housing market for now? Because the math is no longer brutal, it is decisive. And it is quietly deciding who gets to build wealth in the next 30 years and who never will.